Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk on this 18th of May 2025. Hard to believe that we're pretty much halfway through 2025 already. I have been away for the weekend, and I have a bit of a sore throat, which is why my voice sounds a little bit strained. I apologize for that, but hopefully we will make it through the show. I was not 100% sure whether I was actually even going to make it back in time to do a show, but we got back in very, very good time. Good time even. So, I was very happy about that. So, welcome everybody. I hope everybody has had a great weekend. It was a pretty amazing weekend for us. I'm not going to bore you with the details, frankly, but it was absolutely glorious. The weather was insanely beautiful. It was like perfect. No clouds in the sky at all. Gorgeous sunshine. It was nice and warm. It was t-shirt weather. It was idyllic. It was perfect. So it was very, very nice. Now I know that in the United States, there has been a series of, and still is ongoing, a series of tornado outbreaks taking place. And I know that yesterday, I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before, that there was a very, very serious tornado in St. Louis, which has led to, so far as I'm aware, 24 people sadly killed in that tornado that hit the outskirts of St. Louis. So anyone who's watching who is in the St. Louis area, I want you to know that I am with you, even though I'm here in Scotland. My heart and my thoughts and my prayers are with you and your families, especially if you have loved ones in your families who have been injured or killed with that tornado. I'm a fan of tornadoes. They are incredible acts of nature, but even though they can be beautiful to watch and somewhat scary as well, they can be devastating, and they can lead to catastrophic loss of life, limb, and property, and personal possessions and things like that. You can lose your house pretty efficiently with a very large tornado. And so, for as much as I like them and I like studying them and I like watching people go and get up close and personal with tornadoes, on the other hand, I have to remember that actually, there can be occasions where people are in the damage path of a tornado and that can lead to immense suffering. So, that's a kind of a bit of a sobering thought, And so, I wanted to make mention of that at the start of the show. So anyway, with all of that said, and with those people very much in my heart and very much in my mind, let's get this show underway. So, Billy Morgan, as per usual, was first in the door. That's kind of just totally normal. Followed by Tony Stringer, who is here. Welcome, Tony. Stephen Wilson is here as well. We got Keith from Radio Top Trumpet also here. And we got Kyle Traduziak. We've got Dave as well, who says, got his... right, okay, Dave. And we got Dwayne here as well. We got Matt Cochran. And who else do we have? We've got Kyle Trajusiak. We've got Bobby Booth. We've got Ron here as well. We've got Just Bob. We've got Don Oliver. And I think that's pretty much everybody so far. If you are watching and you'd like to say hello, or you'd like to ask a Studio One question, which is what this show primarily is all about, but we'll also talk broadly about recording, mixing, and mastering, and audio stuff. That's kind of what this show is all about. So if you're watching and you're not a subscriber, you'll notice that we're in subscriber mode in the chat. So if you'd like to ask a question, or you just want to say hello, and you just want to, get to know me, I want to get to know you, and this little community here would love to get to know you as well. If that's the case, then please do hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a thing, because not only do I put out this live stream every week on a Sunday, I also do another live stream for songwriters, which is called Songwriting Simplified, where we break down the whole thing of songwriting into constituent, manageable, understandable parts, and we also take apart some music theory concepts as well to help you get better at songwriting, get better at understanding how music works as well. And we do that on a Wednesday night at the same time as this show, so it's 6 p.m. Central, and that's on a Wednesday. Plus, I do also put out tutorial videos. There's a whole bunch of videos on this channel already, and there are many, many more to come. I've already got a bunch that are locked and loaded, ready for release, and they will be released pretty soon. Some of them. So if you are interested in those videos and all other content that's here on this channel, please do hit the subscribe button. And if you are watching, you have a question, please start your question with @Jonny Lipsham Studios. That highlights my name in red. And when you do that, it makes it easier for me to pick out your question from amongst just the general chat in the chat. I like it when you guys are talking to each other and getting to know each other and all of that fun stuff. But if you got a question, start with my name. That way it's easier for me to find your question. Mixmaster is here, who is in Milwaukee, which is awesome. My sister is actually not that far away from Milwaukee. She is a wee bit to the south of Milwaukee, actually. That's where she lives, and she's been there for, oh, good grief, 30 years, pretty much. Yeah, she's pretty much been there for 30 years, and she holds dual citizenship. So she's a British citizen, and she's also a United States citizen as well. So like I said, if you got a question, get it in the chat, and I'd be happy to help with anything that you would like to ask. And also, if you've got a more full-length question or something that's a little bit more in-depth, that's going to take a little bit more unpacking, you can email me. Just go to the web address at the bottom there, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and you can send me your question that way. So you're not restricted by 160 characters, less the ones that you have to do for @Jonny Lipsham Studios. Okay, so you can do that. If you've got a much longer form question, I will check my emails to see if there are any, and right now there are not, but that's okay. Mixmaster wants to ask a question, but he has actually typed my name wrong, which is why it has not shown up in red. And you need to put the @ symbol first. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So if you do @Jonny Lipsham Studios, that's what I mean. So if you type that, that's how it comes up, and then you can ask your question after that. And then what that does is, for me, I'm looking at that just now that I've just typed in there, and my name now shows up in red. It's like white writing on a red box, and it just makes it super duper easy. for me being able to read your questions and make sure that I don't miss them. In times past, I didn't really have a system for this, and so it meant I just missed people's questions. And I think for a while it was just like, yeah, stick a question mark at the start, and that was no easier for me to pick. So, yeah, starting your question with at Jonny Lipsham Studios is a great help. Helps me out a lot. Makes it easier for me to get your question. Now, it's not flawless by any means. I may still miss your question, but I'm going to try very hard not to. So Mixmaster, I believe you do have a question. So we're going to wait for your question because I understand that you're probably typing it furiously. Seeing as you've started with Studio One questions, so we'll wait on that. Alpha and Amiga, in the meantime, has a question. He says, in Pro Tools, there is a setting that sets the speed of recovery when automating in touch mode, so there isn't a sudden jump in volume. Is there a setting in Studio One for touch mode? That's a great question. I don't do an awful lot of automation, to be honest. And what I tend to do is I tend to put it in latch mode, which basically means that when I let go of the fader returns to its original position. So if my fader was at, say, minus 5 dB, when I do my automation, I'm either going up or down on the fader. When I release the fader, it goes back to that specific point. I think that's kind of what you're talking about. In Studio One, it does it kind of smoothly. It doesn't like suddenly go, which is, I think, what you're talking about. It kind of just goes like that rather than straight up. Because you're right, because that would definitely affect, particularly if you're doing quite a large change in automation, certainly for volume, like a 10 dB variation, plus minus 10 dB. If you're doing a lot like that, then yeah, put it in latch mode, and it should just go nice and smoothly back up rather than, immediately jump back up to where it was. Certainly that has been my experience with it. I don't know that there's necessarily a specific speed that it goes at. However, after you have written your automation, you can always go back and adjust it. So instead of the line being straight up, you can adjust it so that it has a very, very slight tilt to it. That way it doesn't go up quite so, instantaneously. So you can certainly go back after the fact and, tidy some of those bits up if you want to. I'm using fader port 8. I think I meant latch, not touch. Yes. Yeah, latch would be the way to go. And if you are using latch, then yeah, it shouldn't just like jump instantaneously. Let me go kind of check this out for a minute. Let's go and grab a new song. And we'll just kind of play with this idea. We'll just grab a loop out of Studio One Loops. We'll find something that's going to be useful. Let's see what I can find here. Yeah, that's kind of going to be useful because it's got some long tones in there. And I'm aware you're probably screaming at me going, yeah, we're not looking at the screen. I know. And we're going to change this blue to something a little bit more reasonable. And we're going to click on this little panel here to open up our automation. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this into latch mode. And then what I can do is... see, we're adjusting that fader right there. So if I control click on this, it puts it back to 0 dB. And then what we can do is we can double this a few times. There we go. Then what we'll do is we'll set this up to loop a little bit. And let's slow the tempo down a little bit. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just hit play and then we'll put this is in latch mode. Good. So let's just play this. And that doesn't appear to be going back automatically. Curious. Okay, let's take this out of latch mode and put it in touch. And let's undo all of that automation. And we'll control click that. So you can see there, it does go pretty much straight back up. If we zoom in, you can see that it's not a straight line. It is actually tilted by default. And you can, of course, just you can kind of extend that back if you want, make that a little bit longer. Okay, so putting it in latch mode actually is not the correct answer. Latch basically just makes it go and it waits for you to turn it back up. Whereas if you got it in touch mode, as soon as you let go of it, the fader goes back up. So if you don't want that, then latch is going to be your option. Let's get rid of all of that, and then let's put this back into touch mode. And let's record some more automation, this time in touch mode. All right. And then what we'll do now is we'll put this just into read mode. Now what you can probably hear in the background there is not only the music, but you can probably hear being picked up by the mic, the mixer, the Studio Live mixer that I've got sat in front of me, and the fader port. Both faders are going up and down in sync with each other. So, yes, the answer is if you want to have control over how long it takes for it to go back up to where your fader started, then put it in latch mode rather than touch mode. If you put it in touch mode, it does go straight back up fairly quickly. But as you saw when I did it in touch mode, it is a little bit of an angle. It's not a straight line. So it is going to give you less immediate attack back up to full volume than if it was instantaneous. So you should, I think, probably your best solution is latch mode, but I don't think touch mode is going to be a bad option either, particularly. But that's a great question. Go back over here, and let's see what else we have. Dave says perhaps discuss chord detection in chord track. I've actually got a video on chord detection and using chord track. So those are available on my channel. So you can just go into my channel, you can click on the little magnifying glass, and then you can just type in chord track. And it'll come up there. And I actually went into quite a lot of depth, especially when we first released Chord Track for Studio One on how to use it, how to get the best out of it. And I also discussed some of the accuracy, because when we first released it, it only did 4-note voicings, and I would say it was a good 90% accurate. So there was a good bit of 10% where it may not necessarily always be right with your chords and your chord voicings. And also, here's the thing. There are several different ways to spell a chord. So you might think that you're playing, a G6 chord, and Studio One might interpret that as an E minor chord or an E minor over G chord. That's not incorrect. Technically, it's not incorrect. It's just a different way of expressing those particular notes. Those particular notes that make a chord could be expressed in a couple of different ways. Could be G over E, could be E minor 7, could be G6, E minor over G. There's a whole bunch of different ways in which you can express what those notes are. Context is always going to be king. So what does that mean for Chord Track? Well, what that means is Chord Track is not necessarily always going to be just a case of grab the audio, detect the chords, dump those into Chord Track, and then print it out and give it to your guitar player, and your guitar player is just going to have no problem at all. It's not 100% accurate. It's not 100% flawless because it doesn't know the context of your music. It only knows what it hears, and it only knows, certain chord voicings that it hears. And so it's dependent upon the information that it knows already in its... And when I say this, it's not AI. Chord Track and chord detection in Studio One is not AI. It's an algorithm, but it's not artificial intelligence at all. It's just algorithmic based. It has a library of chords that it knows. It listens to your audio and it tries to match your chord with chords that it knows. And then it's a case of trying to contextually spell them correctly. So what does that mean for you? That means once you've detected chords and you've got them in the chord track, you may need to go and correct some of the nomenclature. So turning, a G6 chord, a G6 over E chord into what it really is, which is an E minor 7 chord. And that's easy fix. You just double click on it and you type what the correct spelling should be and then hit enter. Done. It's as simple as that. And there will be people out there that will say, well, that's laborious. That's just going to take up time. I'm going to have to type in those values. But, nothing is flawless in the digital domain ever. There are times in the digital domain and in software like Studio One, like Pro Tools, like Logic, like Cubase, like all of them, where you are going to have to do something manually in order for something to work as you want it to work. It's never just going to be a case of enter in data comes out, done. If that were the case, music production would be, it would be a bit sterile, really. In my opinion, it would be quite sterile. And it would not be nearly so much fun. The fact for me is that we have to tell a computer what it needs to do. And then the computer goes, oh, okay, I will do that. And then it presents you with the sounds that you want and the chord changes that you want at the end of the day. And yeah, you're going to have to correct a computer because computer's not flawless. And that's kind of a little bit of a side rant. So let's get to Mixmaster's questions. And he's still not spelled my name right, which is why it doesn't come up correctly. He says, I got my Studio Live AR16C working with Studio One 7 Pro. And he's got a Korg, he's got a CD player, he's got Bluetooth. He's set up his inputs and his outputs, and he's recorded to individual tracks, and he's played back. Is there another part to this? If there is, he's not typed it out yet. So we'll come back to that. We'll come back to the rest of Mixmaster's question. Matt Cochran says, how many measures in a typical Western music song in length? Depends on the tempo and depends upon the duration. So if your song is 3.5 minutes and your tempo is 120 beats a minute, you can calculate how many beats that's going to be and then divide that by what your time signature is. And then you'll have worked out by a little bit of math how many measures your song has. So if it's a 5-minute song and your tempo is much slower, say 65 beats a minute, because it's a nice little 1950s blues ballad style song, then, the number of measures is going to be different. So, and again, if it's, it's like a bebop standard, like Scrapple from the Apple by Charlie Parker, for example, and you're recording it at 320 beats a minute, 4/4, same duration, 3.5 minutes, it's going to be a lot more measures. So, that is a little bit like, how long should a piece of string be? Well, the piece of string should be exactly as long as you need it for the job that you need to do with it. So, if you're tying something down to a chair to, make a temporary repair to a broken leg, you're only going to need a certain amount of string. However, if you are wanting to hang up laundry, then you're going to need several feet of string. So context is always the answer there. Sean Carr is here. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here, mate. Is there software that can roll my R's? You can go learn Scots. There's plenty of Scots learning resources that might help you there. Alpha says, but is there no actual setting to set the speed of recovery? Thanks, though I saw another stream of Pro Tools guy said there was a setting and he thought there would be one in Studio One. If there is, I've never found it, to be honest. There might be. I've never used anything more than either the speed that I want by using latch mode or just using the regular touch mode, to be honest. I've never had an issue where, the volume is very, very sudden, because to be honest, I'm not doing massive, great big jumps in dynamics with volume automation. For the music that I make anyway, the music that I make just requires a little bit of subtle automation. Like I'm going to bump the chorus up by 1.5 dB and then it's going to go back down. And then, with like a vocal, I might do some volume rides, but I'm not doing a lot. I'm doing up, down, up, down, up, down. I'm doing like that. It's like a dB, maybe 2 dB at the most, going up and down. And for that, I don't use touch mode. I use latch. Unless I am in a scenario where I'm doing the volume ride and I need to go back to the original starting point, for a wee bit of time before then I'm doing a little bit more of a vocal ride and then it's going back to, its original position. Then yes, then I'll use touch mode. But like I said, if I'm only doing plus minus 2 or 3 dB, you don't get that massive dramatic jump in volume just by using the default setting. Okay, Mixmaster says, was all good, recorded tracks, playback, always good, now no output. Main shows audio levels, but you don't hear anything. Then it's going to be a connection issue. If you've got audio coming into Studio One and you see the meters moving, and even the main out meter is moving, and your interface is showing that you've got audio going through it, in and out, then it's going to be a connection problem between the outputs of your interface and your speakers. Check those connections. Make sure nothing is muted. Just Bob says, can you add automation to track with record to layers used, so you can check each layer to the automation and keep the best layer track and delete the others? Oh, good question. Don't know. I've never done that before, to be honest. I think, here's the thing. I think if you promote a layer that you've done automation on, never done this, but I think that automation might go with it up and be promoted up into your master track. The problem that you might encounter with that is if you've got like bars 1 and 2 of take 1, bars 5 and 6, bars 1 and 2 from take 1, bars 3 and 4 from take 5, bars 6 and 7 from another take. But you like the automation on each one of those little sections, the automation might be jumping all over the place because they're not going to be seamlessly joined together in your master track because the automation is going to be different. So that's something to bear in mind. And so even actually doing what you're talking about may not actually work for you. If I'm understanding your question correctly. Let's see. Gardner99 is here. He says Mixer might be on mute. Yes, it might be on mute. That's a great point. Billy Morgan says, how much string is needed for theory? Depends what you're trying to theorize. And whether this is in fact G-string theory, because that's a whole nother level of string theory. Let's see. I'm going back up the chat. Revising post hoc is a good idea. Yes, I think it probably is, Alpha, to be honest. I think it's maybe the best way to go. To be honest, personally, there's a couple of reasons why I don't do a whole lot of automation. Number one is the genre that I work in. Number two is I find automation very, very tedious. Now, I know there's some people that, they are a whiz at doing automation with faders and using a fader port to do all of that. And they actually enjoy it. For them, it's fun. For me, no, it's just tedious. So if I can automate the process, pun intended, then to me, that's always a better option. But, like you can use the freehand, you can use the sawtooth, you can use the sine wave, and you can just drag that all the way across. Now, obviously, that's not always going to work because it will put peaks where you maybe don't want them and troughs where you maybe don't want them. In which case, just hitting play and moving that fader with your fader port or with your mouse is the only real way to do it. But yeah, I just find it a little bit tedious, to be honest. Unless I'm just doing like a general thing, like I said, like I'm bumping up the chorus by a dB and a half and then I'm dropping it back down again to normal. Depending upon what I'm doing, I like to, if I'm working on a pop song, I like the intro to be nice and big and solid, and then the first verse is just a little bit quieter, so that you get the impact of that intro, and then you just settle back into the verse, and then the chorus is nice and big and solid, and then you settle back into the next verse. So I like to do that kind of automation. I don't use a fader port to do that. I actually just draw that in, to be honest. Just by putting points in. So if I'm doing that with the whole mix, then usually I will have what I call, what would I call it? I'd call it a mix fader. And basically it is just a VCA where everything in the entire mix is going to that VCA, and it's literally just to turn up and down the entire mix using VCA. And so when I do that, that's the way I do it, and I keep my master fader not really being touched, to be honest. And so I'll use that VCA to do those kind of things. And I can write the automation on directly on that particular VCA track. It's a cinch. All right, let's go see what else we've got. Keith says he tends to draw in all his automation, mostly volume and send automation. Yep, I do the same. I will draw it in, I will use write mode where I need to, and I will use touch mode where I need to. But for the most part, I'm just drawing it in where it's necessary. Let's see, we got any other questions, folks? Because we are coming up on about 20 minutes left. And these have been really, really good questions so far. Dave says G-string theory depends on the pole position. Yes, I think maybe it does. It might also depend upon some other positions too. Alpha says, for effects, for example, automating mix knob on a plugin, draw a short length of sine, then use the box selection, highlight and stretch the length of the part. Gets nice and smooth variations. That is definitely a very, very good option. Especially if you are doing automation on, say, a reverb and you want a gradual increase of reverb, and then you want it to gradually die away for a particular section of a song. That is definitely a great thing to do. And the cool thing is, like you say, highlighting is fantastic. Now, let's go, and for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, let's go take a look at this, and we will expand this a wee bit. And so what we can do here is we can highlight all of this, and I can adjust all of that at once. Look at that. That's pretty cool. It's not really doing what I was expecting it to do though, however. So it's been a while since I've done this, so I'm probably just doing it wrong. Yeah, I'm probably just doing this wrong, and I can't remember how to do it. Oh, it's the transform tool. That's what I needed. Transform tool. Grab this guy like this. Then you got this nice yellow box, and you can do all sorts of interesting things by let's just select this box, and let's go into the corner here, and we can do some interesting things with it here. We can, of course, turn everything down, but we can, of course, also flip it. So let's see what happens when we play it from here. Okay, let's make all of this a little bit louder. Yeah, and we clip there. But yeah, I think you get the idea. You can invert all of this. Then we can move this up. So that transform tool is very, very powerful, and you find it in this pencil tool. Where's the pencil tool gone? Where's the pencil tool gone? Oh, here we go. So normally it defaults to this pencil tool, and then you just go down to the bottom and you can do transform there. So let's say we would put some sine wave in here, or sine wave in here, maybe. You can do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, whoops, I didn't mean to do any of that. I'm going to range select all of this stuff here and turn it down a little bit. There we go. All right, so you get the idea there. You can freehand it. You can do all sorts of fun things with it as well. And that's the knife tool. That's not what I wanted. There we go. So these are the things that I was referring to earlier with a line tool, parabola, square, triangle, saw, sine, and transform. And I just showed you the transform tool with this set of automation here. These are really, really helpful and valuable. And you can just like use one of these to get you in the broad, ballpark of where you want your automation to be. And then you can use the transform tool to finesse it, or you can move these points about as much as you need to kind of shape how you want your automation to go. Very, very handy. Very, very handy indeed. Don't use them nearly as much as I possibly should or possibly could. But, the genre of music that I work in doesn't really need it, to be honest. I don't do a lot of automation because I work mostly in jazz and folk music and other acoustic music forms. So I really don't do much automation. And so, if somebody presents me with a really, really great pop song and I really, really like it, then yeah, I will mix it. And, I have to kind of get these automation ideas that I have out of a very dusty closet. And as you saw just there, I'm a little rusty. But that transform tool is incredibly powerful for doing some very, very creative automation. And, you can use one of those parabola or sine or something like that. And then you can use the transform tool to really shape your automation. Dave says, automating reverbs, pans, etc. to pencil in is tedious. It could be. Depends on how much you want to do it, and depends upon, what you're needing to do. Dave said a fader port is a lot handier to automate on the fly. Mixing in analog in the past, writing the faders was the normal. Yes, it most certainly was. A lot more regular to write the faders. But here's the thing. You had to plan all of that out. And sometimes what we would do, if we had very specific automation on very specific faders in the mixer, we would we would rehearse it, but here's what we would also do is we would actually have a chart with the automation written on the chart. So we'd have a sheet of paper with the automation written on the chart, what you needed to do. Once it had been worked out and composed, essentially composing what the automation should be, you then would write it out so that it was, you didn't have to rely upon memory and potentially faulty memory. We would write it out. And then having written it out, you would then rehearse it just in playback. And then you would hit record and you had one shot and one shot only to get it onto tape. So it had to be very, very well rehearsed. So that would take a lot of time. You would devote maybe a whole day to doing automation on the particular song to make sure you have it right. I know they did that with 10cc's I'm Not in Love. They basically turned the SSL console basically into a piano. They had one particular chord on one particular set of faders, another chord on another set of faders, another chord on another set of faders, and that's how they did it. And they would turn up for that chord, turn those down, turn the next one up for that chord, and so on and so forth. And that's how they did it. So that had to be all charted out so that everybody knew what they were doing, and everybody was on the console with a particular group of faders under their fingers, and they moved those when they needed to. All of that was written out on a big piece of paper and spread out across the whole console so that everybody knew what they were doing, when they were doing it, and then it all went down to tape in one take. And that was how you had to do it. Whereas now, for as much as everybody has rosy romantic, spectacles about the good old days of analog when we mixed on analog consoles and we mixed down to analog 2-channel tape and all of that stuff. For as good as that was, what we have now is far, 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 far more infinitely flexible. Because you can automate anything. And you can automate anything as much as you want or as little as you want. You can have on one single track, you can have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different elements all being automated in the space of one section of music if you want to. I know in the EDM music business, you will easily have that because you are automating different parameters at the same time of just one instrument. Different filters, different sweeps, different all kinds of things. And so a lot of that is written using something like a fader port. But some of that is actually drawn in by hand because it needs to be really specific. So they would use either a pencil on a, and like a pencil on a trackpad or something like that to actually draw it in, or it's done with a mouse, or it's done, in some other way. But yeah, for as much as we talk about, weren't the good old days on mixing consoles so much better? No, I don't agree. And I come from that period because when I first started mixing audio, I studied with an audio engineer and I studied with him on an SSL 4000E console back in the early 1980s. That's what I learned on. Flash forward 10 years to when I was doing my music degree, and part of my music degree was audio. I did 2 modules on audio. Like a whole year of my degree was on music production and audio. And so again, I was back on an SSL console and I did all of my coursework on an SSL console. I did a lot of mixing for other students. And I gotta say, I'm glad I don't have an SSL console. Those things are a pain in the arse to maintain and they are very, very expensive to run. And I don't miss it for 10 seconds, to be honest. Alpha says copy and paste from one automation lane to another is also very useful. It definitely is. And you can't do that on an SSL console. But now you can edit the one-take automation in S1 and fix it. Yes, exactly right. So if you mess up your automation, not a big deal. You can do it again. No problem. You can just write over it. Very, very easy. Very, very easy indeed. RME is here. And he says, I wish I could save custom automation shapes as presets that I can reuse and tweak. It's only available as part automation through track presets. That is correct. And you would need to go to feedback. Let me think what it is. It's feedback-software.personas.com and make a feature request there. That's the place to go make feature requests now. So I will type that in here so you can just follow the link. Feedback-software. And I've spelled that wrong straight away. Classic Lipsham. Feedback-software.personas.com. So that's where you need to go to make feature requests now. Feedback-software.personas.com. That's a good little wish. I like it. Alpha says, suppose you'd only know Studio One Digital Tech and an alien appeared and offered you SSL and tape and explained the process. Would you switch? No. I would not. I know people that have spent a lot of time mixing in the box and then they have gone and got an SSL console and a whole bunch of outboard gear. My friend David Vignola is one of those people. And he's actually turned his studio into a hybrid studio. So essentially what he has is an in-the-box mixing and mastering experience for his clients, but he also has this analog thing as well, where he has the SSL Origin console, plus he's got a whole bunch of outboard EQ and compressors, just like a classic 1980s studio, like the one that I learned in, to be honest. And he loves it. He absolutely loves it. I would not trade mixing on a mixer with no recall in for anything. I really wouldn't. Because that's the biggest problem with a static mixing console like an SSL is, and by the way, SSL are great. They're a fantastic company. I have friends that work there. And they are a great bunch of guys. I have met a number of people that work at SSL, and the company are fantastic. They are one of the best audio companies in the business. No question about it. But here's the thing. Mixing on one of those static consoles with no motorized faders, no digital recall, is that the mix has to stay sat there until it's signed off by the person you're working for. So you cannot do anything on your console until that mix is signed off on. Whereas what I can do here with my Studio Live mixer is I can work on 2, 3, 4 different client mixes in the same day. And I have complete and utter digital recall of every mix that I do. And so if one of them says, hey, I need you to do this, this, and this, I can go, great, no problem. I can just open their song, do that, save it, print it, send it off. And I can have all of my client sessions open at once in Studio One. I can have 5 or 6 songs open at once. And I can easily just switch between them and do what I need to do for my clients depending upon what they say. It would be cool if typing into this comments input field here in YouTube made typewriter keystroke noises. It would get very, very noisy, especially if 10 of you are all typing at the same time. It would sound like a fecking typing pool. And I wouldn't be able to be heard. Let's see. Neil says, yes, it is much better than back in the old days. And one more bonus that we've been made well aware of is there is no longer any need for gain staging. 100%. 100%. What does mixing and train stations have in common? Mixing in the box and train stations have in common. Neil, I'm going to let you answer that question. We got 3 minutes left of the show. We're going to wait for Neil's answer to that question because I'm sure he will be amused by the answer. Come on, Neil. I know you know the answer. What does mixing in the digital domain and train stations have in common? And it's not gain staging. It's one word, Neil. And it begins with P. And we talked about it last week. It's not gain staging. That should be a big clue. Begins with P. Anyone else can remember from last week, then try and beat Neil to the punch. You need a support ticket. No. Thinking about train stations. Switching tracks. No. What's the thing you stand on whilst you're waiting for the train? And then to get on the train, you step off this particular thing and on to the train. And Alpha has it. He says, I don't often catch you, but I was awake tonight. Well, I'm very glad you were, and I'm very glad you're here. And your questions are great, by the way. And he said, platform. Yes! Platform is the answer. Platforming. There we go. Just Bob says platform. Yes, we got it. All right. And on that entertaining note, we will leave it there for tonight because my voice is pretty much beginning to give up. And I'm just glad I'm on a day off tomorrow so I can sleep and rest up. But I will see you guys all, guys. I will see you guys all on I'll see you guys all on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. I'm very much looking forward to your questions on songwriting, composing, arranging, mixing. No, we don't do the mixing. Songwriting, composing, arranging, and music theory. That's what we do on Wednesdays. We don't do mixing questions. All right. So if you've got questions about songwriting, composing, arranging, and by arranging, that can be arranging for horn section, arranging for a string quartet, doing some orchestral arrangements to give your songs, some extra life, for example, backing vocal arranging. We can cover all of that plus music theory. So that'll be the same time, same place on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central. So please be there. And I would love to take your questions. But until then, folks, I will see you on Wednesday. Good night, everybody. Take care, especially those of you that are in the Oklahoma area where there is a major tornado outbreak underway. Please stay safe. Please stay weather aware. Keep your eyes and ears open to the weather alerts as they come on your cell phones and on your computers and all of that stuff. Because your welfare is very, very important to me. So take care, everybody, and I will see you on Wednesday. Good night.